More broadly, Golden says 21-year-old outfielder Juan Soto is likely the biggest winner in terms of potential memorabilia. Soto hit .333 with 3 home runs and 7 RBI in the World Series. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Next, we donned our skates for Bath on Ice. I'm a natural. Didn't have to hold on to anything or anyone. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Why is Lizzie going rental for Fizzy Haze? Is it because her flat is so beautiful and spacious? Snazzy! Or has roof terrace, garden and party room? Surprising! Or because it's 18 minutes to Paddington? Easy! With friendly staff on hand to take any deliveries? Amazing! Or just because her fuzzy friend can live there too? Find your new home at fizzyhaze.com. Fizzy Living, reinventing renting.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Taylor Riggs.
Ride-hailing company Lyft blew past analyst revenue estimates for the third quarter. Lyft said full-year revenue will now be at least $3.57 billion, beating the projections of about $3.5 billion. Increased ridership and higher revenue per rider drove results, and the company said it will turn a profit in 2021. Shares are rising in after-hours trading, and I go straight to D.A. Davidson analyst Tom White in New York. Tom, what's more impressive, the top line or the bottom line here?
I think you'd have to say the top line trends, as you said, a nice kind of 5% beat on revenue, and it was a high quality beat also. They beat on active riders, and they also really benefited and beat on a sharp acceleration in revenue per rider, which was driven by them really optimizing on price, so taking up prices on some consumer fares. It's an initiative they started kind of late in the second quarter on very select kind of targeted routes and in targeted markets. And so the top line beat was quite nice. The EBITDA beat, the headline beat was quite nice. There's a little bit more nuance there, which I think led to the stock. It's trading up now, but it was trading up even a bit more right when the headline numbers came out.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app. Or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. And U.S. stock index futures are falling this morning following reports that China doubts the possibility of a long-term trade deal with President Trump. Haven assets, including bonds, gold, and the yen, are all advancing. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down about 11 points. Dow futures down 90. NASDAQ futures are down 18. The DAX in Germany is down 0.6%. Earlier, stocks had been edging higher following the Federal Reserve's third rate cut of the year and some solid earnings. 10-year Treasury is up 8/30 seconds, yield 1.74%, yield on the 2-year 1.59%. NYMEX crude oil down 0.4% or 21 cents at $54.85 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.7% or $11 to $15.0770 an ounce. The euro is at 1.1169 against the dollar, British pound 1.2946, and the yen 108.31. Facebook and Apple both posting upbeat results after the close yesterday. Apple up 1.9% right now. Facebook is up 4.7% in early trading. Cigna boosted its outlook for the year, and DuPont narrowed its forecast for the year. The guidance midpoint missing analyst estimates. Those two reporting this morning. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, a former member of the National Security Council, is expected to be asked to explain what he meant when he described to a colleague a sinking feeling when President Trump pressured Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden and meddling in the 2016 election. Tim Morrison was President Trump's top advisor for Russian and European affairs until he left the NSC a day ahead of his scheduled testimony today in the House impeachment inquiry. Washington Nationals fans have been celebrating after beating the Houston Astros to win the World Series. The Nationals won the deciding Game 7, 6-2. In the NBA, the Knicks and Nets lost. The Celtics won. The Rockets beat the Wizards 159-158 in regulation. The Warriors lost, and even worse, Steph Curry broke his left hand and will be out indefinitely. In the NHL, the Devils lost. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It's just before 6:20 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. We want to take a closer look now at some of the strong results we're seeing in the FANG names this morning in the third quarter. Dan Ives joins us. He's Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. And it's interesting, Dan, on a morning when we're being reminded about the ongoing trade tensions between the U.S. and China, when you take a look at Apple's third quarter results, it almost looks as though CEO Tim Cook has kind of figured out how to adjust in the current environment.
Yeah, I mean, the bark is a lot worse than the bite. And I think if you look at the results in iPhone 11, especially out of China, I mean, they really came out swinging with their back against the wall. And I think if you look at numbers and guidance, this is a stock now that's going to go much higher, in our opinion, despite the perceived headwinds, especially in China, that's really plagued the company.
Do you see it really as a perceived headwind, or are there real headwinds continuing for Apple in China?
Yeah, I think it's a complicated question. I think on the supply side, in terms of Foxconn and such a manufacturing, there's a worry that there could be disruption in the supply chain. And I think thus far that hasn't happened. That's probably been the biggest risk. In terms of the demand, about 20% of iPhones over the next year are going to be out of China. So as of right now, it's tracking about 15 to 20% above expectations. The Huawei nationalist sort of backlash that was maybe expected and worried about, at least has not happened as of yet. And I think the guidance indicates that there's still some pretty blue skies ahead for Apple in China.
Is there concern about the domestic market for smartphones? I know that Apple has put a lot more of its focus on the services side of its business, looking for growth there. But does Apple need to continue to grow its gadget business domestically?
Yeah, look, domestically, you're definitely seeing more maturity on the smartphone side. But if you look at iPhone 11, you look at this trifecta of iPhones, they've really hit the jackpot in terms of what consumers were looking for. And I think it comes down to just the math. You have about a third of the install base, 900 million iPhones worldwide. About a third of those are in the window of an upgrade opportunity, including many in the United States. And you're seeing those upgrades come through. And that's really the fuel in the engine for Apple in terms of what you saw in iPhones, services, as well as sort of the overall, what I would view as just the halo effect going forward, especially with streaming TV launching this Friday.
How do you see the incentive programs that Apple's put out there working? Is it the right strategy, doing things like monthly payment plans, trade-in offers, that sort of thing?
I mean, that was a genius strategy in terms of the bundling as well as the pricing. Aggressive, going after Netflix front and center, and obviously Disney and Iger are doing that as well when they launched their service. We believe this is what they need to do. Now, content, they're going to need to ramp significantly. But if you look at this, I think they're on a trajectory. You could get 20 million consumers first year out and 100 million when you look out 3 to 4 years. And that will be the 1-2 punch. Now it's about monetizing the install base, and that's what the focus is for Cook and Cupertino on services.
Talk to me about Facebook's earnings as well. Are you surprised that the social network is still finding ways to grow its subscriber base, even in North America?
That is really the crowning achievement for Zuckerberg and Facebook. In face of everything you're seeing from a regulatory, not just in the Beltway, but in Brussels, it comes down to 2.4 billion. That's the number of consumers in the platform. And advertisers have no choice but to go on Facebook, given the engagement you're seeing. And I think they've done a masterful job over the last year, and you see it in the stock, with all the headwinds and all the worries, navigating, make sure advertising and consumers stayed on the platform. I think this was really a major step in the right direction in terms of Zuckerberg and Facebook, just given what's been happening in terms of the noise.
About 30 seconds left, though. You got to think that regulatory scrutiny is still going to be a headwind for this company, no?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, Zuckerberg at this point should probably get an apartment in Washington, D.C. He's going to be spending so much time there. But you're going to continue to see the grandstanding, especially in D.C., but what Wall Street's focused on are the numbers. And that's why I think there's two different worlds going on here, and advertisers and consumers are continuing to flock to Facebook, and that's why the stock's going to be higher.
Always good talking to you, Dan. Thanks so much. That's Dan Ives, Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. And just looking at the FANGs in the pre-market, shares of Apple higher by just about 2% right now. Facebook shares up more than 4.5% on those solid third quarter earnings for the tech giants. As for the broader market, S&P futures are lower by 10 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stock futures are slipping. Officials in China are casting doubts on reaching a comprehensive long-term trade deal with the U.S., even as the two sides get close to signing a Phase 1 agreement. S&P futures down 12, NASDAQ futures down 22, Dow futures down 99. NYMEX crude is a little bit lower at $54.86 a barrel. U.S. investors are coming off an all-time high after the Fed cut interest rates as expected and signaled that it was not likely to move in either direction anytime soon. The Dow was up 115 or 0.4%. The S&P climbed 10. The NASDAQ was up 27. Both the S&P and NASDAQ notching gains of 0.3%. Ford has reached a tentative agreement with the United Auto Workers Union on a new labor contract for its U.S. workers, likely avoiding a strike that cost crosstown rival General Motors billions of dollars. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
It's another Thursday morning. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
What if your email was organized by project and not by date? What if everyone looked at the same thing instead of their own inbox? Then it wouldn't be email at all. Forget your fragmented, jumbled inbox and make the change to channels in Slack. Spaces dedicated to individual projects, topics, or teams. All your communication is neatly organized and everyone is on the same page. Slack. Choose a better way to work. Get started at slack.com.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
You're in charge of hiring and Indeed has solutions, like online skills tests, which let a candidate show that they are the right hire. And we give you this toy monkey, who will bang its cymbals when the right CV appears on your desktop. Okay, there is no monkey. There is no monkey. But there are online skills tests.
See why more than 250,000 companies in the UK use Indeed for hiring. Visit Indeed.com/try today to try skills tests for free today. Terms and conditions apply.
There's something for everybody this Halloween at Aldi. Dead good sweets, decorations, face paints. Be afraid. Be very afraid to miss out on these shockingly low prices. In store now. Everybody get to Aldi for an amazing Halloween.
Halloween's back, alright.
Hello, Sunil Patel here. This is a set performed by me at the Cavendish Comedy Club in London.
So I get the idea of saving as well. You're supposed to make good decisions now for your future self, but I just don't think that guy deserves it. What's he done for that? He hasn't earned that money. I've earned that money. He's done nothing for it. I've earned that money, so I'm going to keep it because I like nice things.
Well, here's a message from your future self. It's easier to save if you do it the day you're paid. Payday Save Day. Building a society of savers nationwide.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are lower following news on the trade war. Sources close to trade negotiations tell us Chinese officials doubt that a long-term deal with the White House is possible. They say Beijing is unlikely to budge on the most contentious issues and remain concerned that President Trump could back out of any agreement.
Well, meanwhile, we did hit a fresh record for the S&P 500 yesterday after the Federal Reserve lowered interest rates again. Traders now see no rate cuts until April as Chairman Jerome Powell stands pat.
We see the current stance of monetary policy as likely to remain appropriate.
as long as incoming information about the economy remains broadly consistent with our outlook.
And tune in for more insight from the Fed tomorrow when we have an exclusive interview with Richard Clarida. Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow sit down for a conversation with the Fed Vice Chairman at 9:30 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
Overnight in Asia, the Bank of Japan kept policy unchanged but strengthened its wording on interest rates. That leaves the door open for the possibility of lower rates.
Hong Kong has officially entered a technical recession. Third quarter GDP contracted by 3.2%, coming in far below estimates for a contraction of 0.6%.
In Europe, Fiat Chrysler and Peugeot are moving forward with a merger. The automakers have agreed to work toward a full 50-50 combination with a binding agreement likely in the coming weeks.
On the earnings front, shares of Facebook are up 4.5% in early trading after results that beat projections. We get details now from Kurt Wagner in the Bloomberg 960 San Francisco newsroom.
Facebook added 35 million users to its main platform for the quarter. Ad sales reached $17.7 billion. That broke the record for the highest ever sales result for any single quarter for Facebook. That growth is likely to have come from ads inside its Instagram photo sharing app. However, Facebook keeps those exact numbers close to its chest. In San Francisco, I'm Kurt Wagner, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Kurt, thank you. And shares of Apple up 2% in the pre-market after earnings topped estimates and its holiday forecast came in ahead of projections. Here with more is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
It signals solid demand for the latest iPhones, new services like Apple TV Plus, and wearables such as upgraded AirPods and Apple Watch. The forecast suggests Apple is seeing strong demand for the iPhone 11 and iPhone 11 Pro models that went on sale in September, and it suggests Apple will return to growth after missing sales targets in last year's holiday period. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Charlie, thank you. S&P futures down 10 points this morning. Dow futures down 84. NASDAQ futures down about 18. And the euro 1.1170 against the dollar. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, thanks, Karen. 6:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. House Democrats and Republicans are rounding up votes on the proposed ground rules for considering the impeachment of President Trump. A near-party line vote is expected today on the 8 pages of procedures in the Democratic-controlled House. Meanwhile, House investigators expect to hear next from the man who until recently was President Trump's top advisor for Russian and European affairs. Tim Morrison had been with the National Security Council until leaving his post the day before today's scheduled testimony in the House impeachment inquiry. Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes, who sits on the House Intelligence Committee, says testimony so far is pointing to what has become known as the quid pro quo when it comes to aid for Ukraine.
Many of the witnesses, and I say this based on the opening statements that have been made public, have certainly pointed in the direction of the notion that military aid, a meeting in the White House, were held up as a way of exerting leverage on the new president of Ukraine. That is a very serious issue.
Former National Security Advisor John Bolton is not agreeing to a voluntary interview in the impeachment inquiry against President Trump, saying he will not appear without a subpoena. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey announced that the company has decided to stop all political advertising on Twitter globally. The move comes after Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg came under fire for saying Facebook won't take down false or misleading political ads. President Trump's re-election campaign chose the final game of the World Series to broadcast a new ad. The commercial narrator says he's no Mr. Nice Guy, but sometimes it takes a Donald Trump to change Washington. Kamala Harris plans to cut staff and restructure her presidential effort. Her campaign is failing to catch on with Democratic voters, and she remains locked out of the top tier of candidates. Santa Ana winds are expected to linger for a final day after driving more than a dozen wildfires through California. There is some good news. The Kincaid fire that's destroyed hundreds of structures in the Bay Area in Sonoma County is now 45% contained. Cal Fire spokesperson Jonathan Cox.
There's a lot of optimism that we have turned the corner for the better on this fire, and I think that is indicative of the fact that a lot of evacuation orders and warnings were lifted this afternoon.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. 6:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, the Washington Nationals were a franchise known for playoff disappointments, but this year they won that one-game wild-card playoff after trailing by 2 runs in the 8th inning. They beat the Dodgers in a decisive game after trailing by 2 in the 8th. And last night, World Series Game 7 in Houston, the Nats down 2 in the 7th. Anthony Rendon homered, and 2 batters later.
Pitch. Swinging a line drive, slice down the right field line toward the corner. Springer back, looking up, and this one is gone. It hits the foul pole, and the Nationals lead. Howie Kendrick has done it again. A slicing 2-run homer off the right field foul pole. Do you believe it, Howie Kendrick? Part 2.
That's radio the call. It was Kendrick who won that game in L.A. with a grand slam. He was the NLCS MVP. The Nationals only had 1 hit in the first 6 innings off Zach Greinke, but 6 runs on 8 hits over the last 3 and another comeback win. 6-2 in Houston, and in a World Series where the road team won every game. Steven Strasburg, who won twice, named Series MVP. He's expected to opt out and command a big new contract. Rendon will be a free agent as well, as will Astros ace Garrett Cole, who in a surprise never got into the game last night, and the Astros will also be thinking about stranding 9 runners over the first 5 innings. Low-scoring game in Orlando. The Magic beat the Knicks 95-83. The Knicks only had 16 points in the fourth quarter. In Brooklyn, Indiana's first win of the year, they beat the Nets 118-108. Not the same Warriors, and last night Steph Curry broke his hand in a home loss to Phoenix. Houston 159, Washington 158. James Harden scored 59 points. The Devils lost in overtime to Tampa Bay 7-6. Kyle Palmieri had the hat trick in defeat. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
All right, John, thank you. It's 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following is an editorial from Bloomberg Opinion.
As if the Brexit process hasn't been fraught enough, the UK is now hurtling toward its 3rd general election in 4 years. On one side will be the Conservatives, supporting an exit deal that would impede trade, harm businesses, and possibly destabilize the union. On the other will be Labour, touting perhaps the most radical far-left economic agenda of any major political party in the Western world. Then there are the wild cards. Nigel Farage's Brexit Party, for example, could pull votes away from the Tories by promising a masochistic no-deal exit. With these dynamics at play, a hung parliament with no majority and no resolution to Brexit is entirely possible. Amid this chaos, one thing is clear. Britain's politicians should take care to restore the possibility of good faith disagreement and orderly democratic discourse. Sadly, this can no longer be taken for granted. It means the stakes are even higher than you might think. This editorial was written by the Bloomberg Opinion editorial board. I'm David Shipley. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to bloomberg.com/opinion or OPI Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion editorials every weekday at this time, and terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. Just before 6:39 on Wall Street, it's time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
California is on fire. Scientists are warning of catastrophic floods and global food shortages. A 16-year-old activist has inspired millions around the world to protest for more climate change action. And the world's largest climate summit, where government leaders were supposed to put a plan in action, has just been canceled by the president of Chile.
Y con profundo dolor.
It was with great pain that Sebastián Piñera said he made the announcement, explaining he had no choice to cancel the so-called COP25 conference in 5 weeks, with political unrest sparking riots in his South American nation. The United Nations now finds itself rushing to salvage an event that was expected to draw tens of thousands of climate activists, investors, and world leaders as nearly 200 nations look to execute on the International Paris Climate Agreement. The prospect of a delay is already threatening to slow momentum that has built in the weeks leading up to the summit. Planning such a large-scale event in so little time will prove a monumental task. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Now let's take a look at some of the most active stocks in early trading. Now, Fiat Chrysler is up more than 4% after it and Peugeot agreed to work toward a full 50-50 merger. Apple is higher by 2%. Facebook is up by almost 4.5% after earnings from both companies topped estimates. Twitter is down 2%. It decided to ban political ads on its platform. Starbucks has a gain of 3% after its earnings beat, and shares of Western Digital are lower by 7% after CEO Steve Milligan announced his retirement. Those are some of the movers in the pre-market this morning. Bloomberg customers can check out all the early equity action by typing most U4GO on the terminal. As for the broader market, it is pushing lower. S&P futures down 11 points. Dow futures down 93. NASDAQ futures lower by almost 23 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole-in-one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
It's another Thursday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Reach the top of Mount Teede or relax on a sandy beach. Fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £349 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
What if your email was organized by project and not by date? What if everyone looked at the same thing instead of their own inbox? Then it wouldn't be email at all. Forget your fragmented, jumbled inbox and make the change to channels in Slack. Spaces dedicated to individual projects, topics, or teams. All your communication is neatly organized and everyone is on the same page. Slack. Choose a better way to work. Get started at slack.com.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
You're in charge of hiring, and Indeed has solutions, like online skills tests, which let a candidate show that they are the right hire. And we give you this toy monkey, who will bang its cymbals when the right CV appears on your desktop. Okay, there is no monkey. There is no monkey. But there are online skills tests.
See why more than 250,000 companies in the UK use Indeed for hiring. Visit Indeed.com/try today to try skills tests for free today. Terms and conditions apply.
Information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
North Korea has fired 2 projectiles toward its eastern sea in apparent resumption of weapons tests against the backdrop of long-stalled nuclear negotiations with the U.S. Japan's defense ministry says it believes the North Korean weapons were ballistic, but they did not reach Japan's territorial waters. The House impeachment inquiry into President Trump's actions is about to enter a new phase with the consideration of ground rules for moving toward any actual impeachment vote. A near-party line House floor vote on the 8 pages of procedures is expected today. It was Washington 6-2 over Houston last night as the Nats are now the World Series champions. Nats pitcher Max Scherzer going all kumbaya over on Fox Sports.
The energy, the camaraderie, the belief in one another, it doesn't matter. Everybody just believes in each other.
Steven Strasburg named the MVP of the series. Stock futures are dropping this hour with the Dow off around 100 points in pre-market trading. I'm Michael Toscano.
If you're at the top of your profession, you're listening.
Are those gains all going to the elite?
Bloomberg Surveillance.
Does it spread beyond manufacturing?
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Premium technology and automation provides clients with lowest cost access to over 125 markets in 31 countries and 22 currencies from a single account. Learn more at ibkr.com/YIB. And futures are lower on this busy morning for corporate earnings. Let's go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. U.S. futures are under pressure as China casts doubt on a long-term trade deal. Dow futures currently down 75 points. S&P's dropped 9, and NASDAQ futures declined by 13. The U.S. 10-year yield falls to 1.74%. Gold is up 10, while European markets are also under pressure, led by losses in the U.K. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 8:30, core PCE and initial jobs claims, and at 9:45, Chicago PMI. After the bell last night, Facebook revenue beat and had 3 million new users in North America. Apple beat estimates. Shares are up 2% in the pre-market, and Starbucks posted strong sales gains in China and the U.S. Regarding some of the earnings this morning, Dunkin' Brands boosted its full-year adjusted EPS forecast and look for Altria and Bristol-Myers to report around 7 a.m. In deal news, Marathon Petroleum to spin off Speedway, and in other news, Apple's price target raised to $300 over at D.A. Davidson. Wrapping things up, Southwest Air was cut to market perform at Bernstein, Cree cut to underweight at J.P. Morgan, and Ryder was cut to hold over at Stifel. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the House plans to vote today on an impeachment resolution that will lay out the next steps in the impeachment process. It will be the first vote the full House has taken on the impeachment inquiry since Democratic leaders launched the probe related to an intelligence community whistleblower complaint. In sports, in the NBA, the Knicks and Nets lost. The Celtics won. The Warriors lost, and even worse, Steph Curry broke his left hand and will be out indefinitely. In the Rockets against the Wizards game, they were handing out points like Duncan handing out donuts. Houston won 159-158 in regulation. No overtime. In the NHL, the Devils lost. Finally, from daybreak on the Bloomberg, you all knew I wasn't going to forget this. Washington, the Nationals fans have been celebrating after beating the Houston Astros to win the World Series. The Nationals won the deciding game 7-6-2. And when Nationals catcher Yan Gomes stuffed the baseball used to record the final out into his back pocket, he probably didn't realize he was carrying a very expensive keepsake. Golden Auction says the ball should be worth $500,000. Nathan, the price is double what Golden said the baseball used to record the Astros final out in 2017 was worth.
Oh, I don't know. I think Yan Gomes knows.
just called out Jan Gomes.
He has not given up that ball for all he's worth, I bet. Pretty amazing feeling in Washington, D.C., by the way. Full disclosure, I'm based in Washington, D.C. The atmosphere in this town, it's like nothing anybody. It's been like 95 years since Washington had a World Series champion, and now here we are.
So you guys, Nationals fans, eating steak, Detroit Tigers fans, Ritz crackers.
As always, yes.
Global news, 24 hours a day, on air, and at TikTok, on Twitter. I like Ritz crackers. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts, more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
I'll save you a bite. Thank you, Michael. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We're at 6:50 on Wall Street. Time now to check what is going on in D.C. Besides the Nationals win, the House holds a floor vote. The first floor vote on backing the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. That comes up later this morning. White House plans to sign a trade deal with China, thrown into question for many reasons now. And Kamala Harris cutting staff and pay as she tries to retool her faltering presidential campaign. Also making news, sources telling Bloomberg China is now casting doubt on a long-term trade deal with the U.S. Let's bring in Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter. Very important scoop from our trade team this morning. Kate, what are we hearing?
Well, it sounds like there's a big meeting going on in China right now, and it sounds like heading into that meeting, a lot of the folks on the Chinese side that have been involved in or privy to these negotiations are casting doubt, as you said, on the prospects for this phase one trade deal that the White House has, already begun to tout very loudly, actually translating into any kind of a long-term deal. So perhaps rather than being a phase one deal, this might end up being the deal.
Now, is this, though, much different from what the sentiment has been from the Chinese side? I mean, we've been reporting for some months now that China has been digging in its heels on some of those big structural changes that the White House has been looking for.
Well, absolutely. And in that way, it's not necessarily surprising that this is the case. There's also some questions, potentially about whether or not this is a negotiating tactic on China's part in terms of casting these doubts. That could be a way we've seen the U.S. play it that way, too. Trump goes out and talks kind of a hard line and, but then behind the scenes is more willing to make a deal. So that's certainly a possibility as well. But I think that right now at this stage, it looks as though the prospects are not super, and it's important to remember too that even for this phase one trade deal, that's something that Trump and Xi were sort of tentatively slated to meet and talk about at APEC in Chile next month. And because of the protests there in Santiago and across the country, that meeting has now been canceled. So I think that kind of calls that into question as well.
Yeah, and now that has been canceled, when you have this report that China's casting doubt on the longer term trade deal, does that raise any more questions about whether this phase one deal could get over the finish line?
I think it certainly does. I think that both sides definitely have incentives to at least try to get that phase one deal put into place. So I think if I had to bet today, I'd say it likely does go forward at some point. We do expect Trump and Xi to meet at some point. And that would certainly, as of now, at least be on the table. But I think that, I think what it does for me is really put into question whether or not a bigger framework deal is really feasible or really realistic to think about now.
Now, one thing we do know is going forward is this House floor vote on the impeachment inquiry, a vote that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had resisted up to now, but it is going to happen in just a few hours here.
Yeah, just a few hours. And this, I think it's really hard to overstate sort of the both historical and symbolic significance of this vote. I mean, even though it is only technically on setting up a process for public hearings for these impeachment proceedings as they move into the public phase, I think it is much more significant than that in truth, because it is really going to be the first time that lawmakers in the House of Representatives are going to go on record on anything to do with the impeachment inquiry. And essentially, it's become a proxy vote for the inquiry itself, and so it will show where members are. Now, it's expected to be largely a party line vote, but I think it'll be interesting to watch on the fringes there whether there are any Democratic defectors who, which I don't think we anticipate, but particularly on the Republican side, whether they are able to get unity among their members in opposition for this, given that there are certain Republicans who are from more blue or purple-leaning districts that this vote may come back to haunt them if they're not careful in terms of, how they vote and what happens going forward.
So is there a possibility, do you think, that we could see some Republicans go on record on this vote supporting the inquiry?
I think at this stage that's a bit unlikely, given that Republicans can always say that Republicans have really focused their criticism on this inquiry on the process, and they can, in the future, they have the cover of sort of chalking this vote up to a process vote and not a substance vote if later they do decide to, side with Democrats on this matter. But I think it'll be interesting to watch, and I think it'll be interesting to talk with some of those more center-leaning Republicans after this vote is over to see, what concerns they have and what they have to say about the process going forward.
So much happening in Washington, and I guess we'll have to talk about the Nationals win off air. Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. And you can read more at Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg terminal. Follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington, Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Coming up to 6:56 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
HBO Max packs a punch. If only it were ready for prime time. I'm Tara LaChapelle, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. AT&T just gave investors a sneak peek at HBO Max, the phone company's very own Netflix-like streaming service. And the verdict is in. HBO Max is compelling, but it's also late to the market. The app has plenty of great content, both old and new, supplied by HBO and its sister brands like Warner Brothers and TBS, but the app won't hit the market until May of next year. That's as Apple TV Plus makes its debut this week, and Disney Plus launches November 12th. At $15 a month, HBO Max is also among the more expensive streaming apps. It's a rate traditional HBO subscribers are accustomed to paying, and this will give them more for their money. But the app may be less of a must-have for people who don't already subscribe to HBO or other AT&T services, since they may not get to take advantage of the same deals to upgrade to HBO Max. Time will tell how well AT&T can use its distribution heft to compete in the streaming wars. I'm Tara LaChapelle. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
And Bloomberg Opinion editorials can be heard every weekday at this time, and terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. And we continue to watch shares of Apple and Facebook this morning. Facebook up 4.4% at early trading, Apple up 2.3%, both posting upbeat results after the close yesterday. We're also watching earnings this morning. Lazard and Avon beating. Estee Lauder beat but cut its forecast for the year. Blue Apron's third quarter loss per share was wider than analysts were looking for. We also heard from Cigna earlier. It boosted its outlook for the year. And DuPont narrowed its forecast for the year. The guidance midpoint missing analysts estimates. And straight ahead, it is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
It's another Thursday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Hello? This is Dustin. I found something. Is anybody there?
We hear you, Dustin. With Sky Q, you can easily catch up on epic Netflix shows like Stranger Things and then watch award-winning Sky originals like Chernobyl. Get Sky and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q for one surprisingly low price, just £25 a month. Visit sky.com and join today. Offer ends November 14th. 18-month minimum terms. Prices may change during contract. Requires Sky Q box connected to broadband. Set up from £20. Further terms apply.
Financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, China doubting it can make a long-term trade deal with President Trump. Chairman Powell signaling the Fed's on pause following its third rate cut this year. And results from tech giants Apple, Facebook beating Wall Street expectations. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Thursday. Here is your Thursday morning price action. Equity futures gapping a little bit lower, down 8 points on the S&P 500, negative 0.33%. Just a little bit of mild risk aversion out there this morning. Yields coming in 3 basis points to 174 on a 10-year. On a 30-year, we're down 4 basis points to 221. And in foreign exchange, G10 set up as follows. The dollar just a touch weaker against the euro. Your outperformance in G10 reflecting that diminished risk appetite. A stronger Japanese yen. Alongside me today, Tom Keene in the studio, as always, and dropping by and joining us, Bloomberg's Lisa Abramovitz. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Your thoughts so far on this market as we gap lower off the back of some pretty solid Bloomberg reporting on the latest between China and the United States?
Well, gapping lower, but not that much lower, right? I think that the big question in markets right now is U.S. earnings are doing pretty well. We got Apple, we got Facebook yesterday, both exceeding expectations. And the question is, the bar is so low, do you end up with beats that don't matter? I mean, that to me is one question. It's sort of these numbers that just don't matter, and it's all about whether or not there could be some kind of trade agreement.
Well, the numbers from Facebook and Apple are pretty decent. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the program. Front and center, a story from our colleagues down in Washington, D.C., that officials from China casting doubts about reaching a comprehensive long-term trade deal with the United States. I should emphasize, phase one and a phase one agreement still very much on the table and proceeding quite well. But the difference here, Tom, is that if you want a sustainable long-term trade agreement, the Chinese have their doubts.
I went to the story, and I'm going to be blunt, folks. A lot of journalism today is one quote wrapped around 12 paragraphs of filler. This story is not that kind of story. Paragraph after paragraph, John, this is reporting on the Chinese tone, and things have shifted. They want tariff relief, or they're not moving forward. That's the thrust, and that took us from futures up 1 to futures negative 12, right now negative 9.
Yeah, and I think to Lisa's point, we're not seeing a massive move in the equity market, but this underlines what many people felt already, that you can come to a phase one truce, maybe buy some more agricultural products, perhaps delay tariff increases, but to really deal with the thorny issues, it's going to be really hard to bring the Chinese to the table.
Is this a surprise?
No, it shouldn't be.
We've known this for a long time.
But I think this is some great colour coming from our team in Washington that underlines the problem that we currently have and the differences between the Chinese and the United States that are ongoing.
My favorite part of it is that there's a disagreement right now between what to include in phase one and what to include in phase two. I mean, it's so granular at this point. What are we talking about when we're talking about phases? It just highlights this tension.
Yeah, Barry Ike agreed with us with Berkeley earlier, and he made very clear it is mercantilism and it's how they push back. And again, the thrust within the article, the meat thrust, is they must have tariff and import tax relief.
And I think, Tom, to characterize phase one, just characterize it as a truce. For that truce to be sustainable.
Isn't phase one just the buying of soybeans?
Yeah, essentially, and perhaps some tariff relief further down the road. But for me, to have a phase one, a truce that's sustainable, you need to deal with the thornier issues, and that's the risk here.
Excuse me, we have to go west.
That's the risk here. You want to bring in Francis Donald?
No, I want to go west to Chicago. Lisa, have you seen a soybean? And, you know, you were a mountain girl years ago. Were you out in the fields looking at soybeans in the Midwest?
I was not, but I lived in Fargo, North Dakota.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of soybeans out there. I mean,
now, folks, Farm Journal with Lisa Abramovitz.
The Farm Journal was amazing.
Was that
all
great?
About sheep and all about the price of the
We did
wool.
Farm Journal every morning, and you learned about it.
It was absolutely phenomenal.
When we were kids,
Yeah,
John.
sure.
That's what you did.
This sounds so exciting.
This is exciting.
Please, continue.
But seriously, East Coast people, Upper East Side, Upper West Side, Manhattan, we don't understand that linkage, John, on this phase one partial soybean item.
I will give you this. U.S. farm bankruptcies surged 24% to the highest since 2011. This according to a Bloomberg News article yesterday, just to give you a sense of some of the strains here.
Is that the morning stat from Lisa Rabbits? Do we get one every morning?
It's Farm Journal.
Francis Donald joining us now, Manulife Asset Management Head of Macroeconomic Strategy. Francis, your thoughts on the events of this morning so far?
Well, this morning is just another example of the market having to digest long-term themes and what the next 2 to 3 years will look like. I was sitting here watching futures drop as much as 0.5%, and I thought, really, off of another trade headline? But it echoes exactly what the Fed told us yesterday, which is we shouldn't really be focused on what the next 3 months look like in the U.S. global economy or for trade. We should be thinking about the long run. And the long run is looking more and more discouraging.
Well, let's look out to 2020. The Chinese PMIs out overnight really weren't impressive at all. They were disappointing. Francis, over the last couple of weeks, the sentiment has shifted. Any reason to believe the data is set to follow anytime soon?
I'm a bit worried there. Chinese PMIs have been sub 50 for 6 months, and we were hoping for a reacceleration or what I call an L-shaped recovery, and everyone says L-shaped isn't a recovery at all. Let's call it a stabilization. But it looks like they might be double dipping, and what's so critical here is that we are in the middle of what people have been calling our third mid-cycle slowdown. But what's different about this one versus 2013 and 2016 is that we don't have the China lifeline this time. In 2013, 2016, we were experiencing a global slowdown. China was easing aggressively. Infrastructure through the roof. We don't have that component this time. And that's what makes 2019, 2020 so different.
I don't mean to pick on you, Francis, but you and I are so up about the Montreal Canadiens. I can understand that I can bring you down. What is mid-cycle? What is mid-cycle?
Mid-cycle only means we haven't put gray bars across our charts and called for a technical recession. But I spend a lot of time thinking exactly about that, Tom, because as someone who's managing money, we have to recognize, are your asset allocation decisions going to be substantially different if you're plus 0.1 or minus 0.1 on your GDP? They really shouldn't. So, I agree. I think it's a little bit of kind of a way to fluff up what's really just called a substantial slowdown in growth.
Do we blame the British? John, what is mid-cycle? I'm serious.
Well, mid-cycle,
it's a question for Clarida
we're reflecting on the mid-90s, late 90s scenario. I just wonder, Francis, whether a better parallel is the growth scare of 15-16. What is the better parallel right now to what we're experiencing at the moment?
Well, we don't have a parallel because we have not experienced, at least since the 1930s, a period of such heightened trade tensions before. That makes this environment really, really difficult for policymakers like the Fed to compare against. They've essentially told us yesterday that 75 basis points is a mid-cycle adjustment just because 1995 and 1998 were 75 basis points. But there's no way for us to know. That's a theoretical concept. My personal view is they have to go at least 25 basis points more. But critically, the messaging that we're getting is it doesn't really matter whether we're mid-cycle or not, or recession or not. This Fed does not want to hike rates for a very long time. So we can sit here and talk about whether the next 3 to 6 months looks like whatever in the bond market, but longer term, this is again a buy bonds, wear diamonds type of situation.
Francis, before we let you go, I'm really pleased to announce that Tom Keene and I do have an interview with the Vice Chairman of the Fed, Richard Clarida, tomorrow morning, 9:30 Eastern. Francis, if you have a question outstanding at the moment, what would that question be?
I'd want to know, when would you hike rates again and exactly how much inflation will it take? That's the most important question for all of markets, and it has to do with this 3 to 5 year outlook that will entirely define what asset allocation decisions look like for the next year.
Francis, what's the inflation? What's the inflation? Is the inflation, Cleveland Fed higher or is the inflation lower?
It's a basket of all of the inflation metrics that shows us that we're back up to a sustainable 2% target.
To me, this is the number one question, John. And Chairman Powell brought it up yesterday.
Francis Donald,
what's inflation?
Thank you. And thank you for writing that question for us. And because of that, we can thank Francis and say Eric Clement, Francis' husband, a fantastic artist. Check it out. Very, very cool stuff. You didn't know that, did you?
I did not know that.
No. Really cool stuff. You should check it out. Looking forward to that interview tomorrow, 9:30 Eastern. A lot to get through.
Well, there's a lot to get through with his identification of the word solid and what does solid mean at 1.9% GDP. but also this idea that was brought up again yesterday about the inflation level. To me, it's just profoundly important to our listeners.
I actually 100% agree with you. I think that the number one thing that Jay Powell, Fed chair, said yesterday was, I think we would need to see a really significant move up in inflation that's persistent before we even consider raising rates to address inflation concerns.
That defines the Cleveland Fed series. It is higher and persistent.
But if the market takes that seriously, the implications are dramatic. I mean, this changes the role of the Fed in a real meaningful way.
Should we get some price action, shall we? This morning, we do gap a little bit lower off that back of that Bloomberg reporting. Futures are lower by 8 points on the S&P 500, negative around about 0.25%. Going into the open, about 2 hours and 20 minutes away. In the bond market, we're set up as follows. Yields coming in 3 basis points on a 10-year to 174. On a 30-year note, we come in 4 basis points. Your yield there, 220. And in foreign exchange, the stage set as follows. Muted price action against the euro. The euro just a touch stronger, but the outperformance comes from the Japanese yen with a little bit of risk aversion. Dollar yen lower by about 0.5%. From New York, this is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And now the news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, thank you very much. A longtime Republican aide and advisor on foreign affairs is being called to testify in the House impeachment inquiry the day after he left his post at the White House. Tim Morrison was President Donald Trump's top advisor for Russian and European affairs when he left the National Security Council ahead of his appearance scheduled for today. The House is expected to vote today on a resolution laying out rules for public hearings and releasing deposition transcripts. The Washington Nationals have clinched their first World Series title after defeating the host Houston Astros 6-2 in Game 7 last night at Minute Maid Park. This is the first time in World Series history that the road team has won every game. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts from more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Jonathan.
I did not know that, but why would I know that anyway? But great stat.
That's never happened.
Who knew? Guys, great to have you with us this morning. What a week we've still got coming up. Payrolls Friday, just around the corner. That's tomorrow. Equity futures just a little bit lower. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
It's another Thursday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways. with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Why is Lizzie going rental for Fizzy Haze? Is it because her flat is so beautiful and spacious? Snazzy! Or has roof terrace, garden and party room? Surprising! Or because it's 18 minutes to Paddington? Easy! With friendly staff on hand to take any deliveries? Amazing! Or just because her fuzzy friend can live there too? Find your new home at fizzyhaze.com. Fizzy Living, reinventing renting.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Briggs.
Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Google, Netflix, the FANGs have all reported, and those reports are in for the quarter. And that means it is time to take a look back and hear what excited SMI CEO and founder Lee Drogan in the world of the FANGs. Lee, who is your standout performer this quarter?
Look, I think Facebook continues to just put up incredible numbers against a background, a cacophony of, all sorts of, stuff in the media that they're dealing with, and rightfully so. But that's a great report there. Netflix was a bit of a disappointment. I think they're kind of a little bit tapped out here a bit on user growth and coming up against a lot of competition. But yeah, again, I think Facebook really stands out here.
Netflix was rising lead today. They're up as much as 4% at one point because AT&T's HBO Max service came out with pricing at $15 a month, which is the first time now that we've seen pricing above Netflix. A lot of the other competitors had come in and undercut them. How big of a headwind remains competition in your eyes?
Yeah, it's just saturation here. I do think that these platforms will be able to raise pricing. The question is, with so many of them in the market, at what point, do consumers, or at what point are they just tapped out?
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are falling following reports that China doubts the possibility of a long-term trade deal with President Trump. Haven assets, including bonds, gold, and the yen, are advancing. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 9 points. Dow futures down 75. NASDAQ futures down 16. The DAX in Germany is down 0.3%. Earlier, stocks had been edging higher following the Federal Reserve's third rate cut of the year and some solid earnings. The 10-year Treasury is up 10/30 seconds. Yield 1.73%. Yield on the 2-year 1.58%. NYMEX crude oil down 0.25% or 13 cents at $54.93 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.8% or $12.70 at $15.0940 an ounce. The euro 1.1162 against the dollar. The yen 108.22. Altria Group, the U.S. maker of Marlboro cigarettes, reported a $4.5 billion charge related to its investment in Juul Labs. Marathon Petroleum buckled under pressure from activist investors by announcing the spin-off of its retail fuel station business, which largely operates under the Speedway brand. And Bristol-Myers Squibb said that U.S. sales have stalled for a cancer drug that makes up the core of the company's growth. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and John.
Karen, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. We did a data check. Up one. Bloomberg reports this morning that the Chinese decidedly want tariff relief if we're going to move forward with the trade talks, and that moved the market. You get lucky sometimes. John Farrow and I did not know that Brendan Murray and our team would be reporting this important story, but we did decide to have on from the University of California at Berkeley, Barry Eichengreen, who joins us now from our London studios. He is iconic on international economics and the globalization of capital. Barry, I want you to take us to Beijing. What is the thought process of the Chinese as they deal with a mercantile American president?
The Chinese know that Mr. Trump is a tariff man. I think they were never under any illusions that this administration was going to give up its aggressive trade policy as part of a far-reaching deal. Neither are they prepared to change their economic model under pressure. Bloomberg's news this morning is big, but it's not surprising. I think this Phase 1 deal was always about $50 billion worth of soybeans. It wasn't about change in the Chinese intellectual property rights regime.
Well, then that we've got to move on as well. What would be an appropriate approach of Mr. Lighthizer to try to get his president and the Chinese together?
Everybody needs to understand that progress, if there is to be progress, is going to have to be incremental. It will start with de-escalating tensions, with some narrowly focused trade deals, and that the bigger issues about forced technology transfer, industrial policy in China, and so forth will take years to work out. And the constraint there is that nobody knows whether Mr. Trump is going to be in office for years.
Well, Barry, beyond just that, Professor, do you think we'll ever work these issues out with the Chinese in the United States?
We're going to have to work them out, I think, if we're going to return to a relatively robustly growing global economy. This backdrop of trade tensions and geopolitical tensions is unsettling for financial markets, but more broadly, it's a negative for business investment. And I can imagine it will become a negative for consumer confidence as well going forward.
The approach will be in the hands of the politicians, and the approach from the president is unlikely to change anytime soon, even if he gets a second term, even if he doesn't. Senator Warren put out her trade position in July of this year, and arguably she's going to put more pressure on the Chinese than perhaps this president of the United States is currently. So, Professor, with that all in mind, I just wonder, in one shape or another, subsequent administrations are going to continue putting pressure on China, aren't they?
You're right, John, that there really has been a sea change in Washington, D.C., where both parties now view China as a geopolitical rival, and they understand that geopolitical power flows in part from economic power and leverage. The question is, what kind of tactics do you use in order to try to deal with the other side? Mr. Trump's tactics, as everyone knows, are disruptive, unpredictable, and I think we're learning again today, unproductive. Maybe a President Warren, a Democratic president more broadly, will have a better match between her tactics and her objectives.
So I'm wondering, Professor, using the market as a tool of persuasion, President Trump coming out and trying to get people optimistic about a deal, I'm wondering if China is trying to get the market to go lower to give them some ammunition to show the consequences of not getting a deal.
I don't believe that the Chinese are looking at how the market reacts strategically from that point of view. I think they are simply trying to send a clear message that we are not going to buckle under pressure. If we offer concessions, we will expect concessions, tariff rollbacks, no more threats that we in Beijing will have to forswear any possibility of tariff retaliation in the future, and a recognition on the part of the United States that China has its own economic model. It's not going to abandon that under pressure. When they send that message, the markets react, but I don't think it's the market's reaction that they have foremost in mind.
Barry Eichengreen, thank you so much, with Berkeley, and of course the author of Golden Fetters and Globalizing Capital, among other words. A wonderful new book out on populism as well that was shockingly prescient. John, that's something we really haven't talked about. And of course, we could get to Brexit and the general election. The populism of pound sterling, a 128 handle, actually Johnsonian today.
This election is going to be fascinating.
In what way?
Going into
You're the
December.
expert.
I'm not the expert, and I don't think anybody is. And I think that's the problem. The polls will tell you one thing, but you can get a certain percentage of the vote and end up with a completely different percentage of the number of seats that you get allocated in Parliament. It gets very, very complex because some of the issues split party lines, not just Brexit, Lisa, but other issues as well. And December, it's going to be, I think, the same election as June 2017. It won't just be a one-issue election. It will be more than just about the EU.
I love the detail that the strategy of having the election around a time when the students will be back home. I love that kind of detail.
I'm not sure if that's going to make the greatest difference, but I do know the Labour Party were a little bit unhappy about that. Guys, we are running you through some of the market events of the last 24 hours. A Fed decision, earnings from Apple and Facebook, actually pretty impressive. Going into payrolls Friday tomorrow with equity futures down just 9 points on the S&P 500. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stock futures are slipping this morning after an all-time high for Wall Street yesterday. S&P futures down 8, NASDAQ futures down 11, Dow futures down 72. NYMEX crude is just under $55 a barrel this morning. Shares of Apple are higher in pre-market trading after the company projected fiscal first quarter revenue that beat analyst estimates, signaling a strong holiday period and solid demand for iPhone 11 models, along with new services like Apple TV Plus and upgraded hardware, including its AirPods earphones. Twitter will be in the spotlight. Shares are slipping after making news late yesterday, saying it would ban political advertising from the platform effective globally November 22nd. CEO Jack Dorsey tweeted that the reach of political messages should be earned and not bought. Two rival car makers have decided that the only way to survive is to combine. The move by Fiat Chrysler and Peugeot maker PSA would create the world's fourth largest automaker. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Then it was time for glow-in-the-dark mini-golf. I got a hole in one. Well, 3. I'm a bit rusty, okay? There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
Why is Lizzie going rental for Fizzy Haze? Is it because her flat is so beautiful and spacious, snazzy? Or has roof terrace, garden and party room? Surprising! Or because it's 18 minutes to Paddington? Easy! With friendly staff on hand to take any deliveries? Amazing! Or just because her fuzzy friend can live there too? Find your new home at fizzyhaze.com. Fizzy Living, reinventing renting.
It's another Thursday morning, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
They don't chant your name when you give blood or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Which Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bell. The news you need to know this hour. U.S. equity futures slightly lower following news on the trade war. Sources close to trade negotiations telling Bloomberg Chinese officials doubt that a long-term deal with the White House is possible. They say Beijing is unlikely to budge on the most contentious issues and remains concerned that President Trump could back out of any agreement. On the earnings front, shares of Facebook are up 4% in early trading after results that beat projections. Apple higher by nearly 2% in the pre-market after earnings topped estimates, and its holiday forecast came in ahead of projections. Twitter down 2% after deciding to ban political ads on its platform. That tells you a little something about what shareholders think of the current move. Shares of Starbucks up 2% after an earnings beat. A little bit more on some of those stories a little bit later. Let's get you some headlines from elsewhere. Let's say good morning to Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jonathan. Good morning, Tom. Good morning, Lisa. House consideration of ground rules for impeaching President Donald Trump is unlikely to end in adoption of procedures favored by Democrats but opposed by Republicans. A near party line vote is expected today. California Governor Gavin Newsom says he sympathizes with Californians forced to live without electricity to reduce fire threats. The governor visited seniors in Napa Valley, where residents in some areas have been at least 4 days without power. He pledges to hold utilities and the state's Public Utilities Commission accountable for the outages.
Too cozy with the utilities, not aggressive enough on public safety, not aggressive enough in terms of the oversight.
Newsom says that he recognizes that losing power can be a health hazard for those who depend on medical devices. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Jonathan.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. It's time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Report. Here is John Stashower.
John, once before there was a World Series champ from Washington. That was 95 years ago. Now there's another.
The kick in, here it comes. Swing and a miss! Swing and a miss! Swing and a miss! And a World Series Game 7 winning Curly W is in the books. The celebration is on. The Washington Nationals are the world champions.
Nationals radio had the call last night from Houston. No team in any sport ever won a championship like the Nats just did, with 4 wins all on the road. They finished winning 8 straight road games. They were in 5 elimination games. They won them all after trailing in all 5. Last night, only 1 hit over the first 6 innings. They scored 6 runs on 8 hits over the last 3. They beat the Astros in Game 7, 6-2. Home runs for Anthony Rendon and Howie Kendrick, whose 2-run shot put them ahead in the 7th. Steven Strasburg, with 2 wins, named series MVP. Knicks struggled to score in Orlando, shot 38%, lost to the Magic 95-83. Knicks fall to 1-4. The Nets are 1-3, beaten in Brooklyn by Indiana 118-108. Hat trick for the Devils, Kyle Palmieri. He finished it scoring with 8 seconds left, but Tampa Bay won 7-6 in overtime. The Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stashower.
John Stashower with a sports report. We've had the news. Let's get you up to speed on some of the price action elsewhere, shall we? S&P 500 futures moving a little bit lower, down almost 10 points on the S&P 500. We're negative 1/3% as we report that Chinese officials are casting doubts about reaching a comprehensive long-term trade deal with the United States. I should emphasize phase 1 and that agreement still proceeding quite nicely. So equity futures are down just a touch, down by around about 10 points. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all. You're listening to Bloomberg Surveillance.
headquarters in New York. Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom Keene, thank you for being with us. Coast to coast, particular thanks to Washington 99.1 FM. Washington, home of the World Series champion, Washington Senators. I'm sorry, Michael, it's the Senators.
No,
we'll get back to that in a moment. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, offering hands-on learning in the largest makerspace in New Jersey for those working in manufacturing and mechatronics. More at njit.edu/manufacturing. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. It's turned into a public opinion and regulatory headache for Facebook, but Twitter seems to have dumped the problem of political ads with little financial pain. Twitter will simply ban all political ads. In a not-so-veiled swipe at Facebook, Twitter chief Jack Dorsey wrote on Twitter, "We believe political message reach should be earned, not bought." Bloomberg's Kurt Wagner tells us the decision doesn't appear to represent a major financial sacrifice.
During the 2018 midterms, they brought in about $3 million in revenue from political ads. So that is a very, very small percentage, pretty much non-existent part of Twitter's business. So it's kind of an easy thing for them to do. Not only are they taking a stand, Jack Dorsey obviously believes this is kind of a moral or symbolic stand about free speech, but it's also not really going to hurt them at all financially. So it's a pretty easy decision when you think about it that way.
The move quickly drew reactions from politicians, including criticism from President Trump's campaign and praise from Joe Biden, a leading 2020 Democratic presidential candidate who has been targeted in ads by the Trump campaign. Apple is resuming its use of humans to review Siri commands and dictation with the latest iPhone software update. In August, it suspended the practice and apologized for the way it used people rather than just machines to review the audio, which undermined Apple's attempts to position itself as a trusted steward of privacy. Now, Apple is giving consumers notice when installing the update, iOS 13.2. Individuals can choose not now to decline audio storage and review. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Jonathan.
Bob Moon, thanks so much. 5 things you need to know to start your day, brought to you by Portfolio Analyst, powered by Interactive Brokers. Savvy investors use Portfolio Analyst to create a consolidated view of their finances and check the health of their complete financial portfolio. Download for free at ibkr.com/PA. John, 2 quarters business investment. Then there's the Bloomberg Reports article on China in delay on a trade deal.
Tug of war between consumption in the United States and business investment and business confidence. And the judgment call, Tom, is whether you think consumption cracks or business investment improves. And that's going to be the debate going into 2020.
I like the judgment call idea, particularly some of the charts we looked at yesterday. Okay, yesterday, the verbiage, appropriate. Mid-cycle, I still don't know what that means. And also, again, like 3 out of the last 4 meetings, the measurement of inflation as well. John, what did you see out of the verbiage? I mean, I was doing it on the show. What did you hear?
I think the Fed's still optimistic. They described the gains in the jobs market as solid jobs gains. I don't know many economists that would say the job gains have been solid. And I do think that they have a pretty balanced outlook going into 2020. I'd like to know how they characterize the balance of risks around their outlook at the moment. 2% GDP growth, unemployment in around 3.5%. That's pretty optimistic in the minds of a few people going into next year.
One thing I'm religious on, folks, over the years is when I do a joint interview, we don't plan it. We don't plan the questions. So I'm going to start right now with John. I'm looking at solid, and of course, Clarida's academic excellence in DSGE. We won't go into that right now. What are you focused on with Vice Chairman Clarida for tomorrow?
How high is the bar for the next rate cut? If they're truly on pause, we need to understand how much of a deceleration we need to see
just in
the
growth
economy.
Or in other details?
Well, relative to their outlook across a load of metrics, what we would need to see for them to get over that bar, Lisa, and deliver another cut.
Can I propose a question?
Of course you can.
I want to know what it means for inflation to be hot in an era where the Fed does not necessarily have faith that they can generate inflation.
Well, I think that tells you about how distant a rate hike is.
Yes.
And that, for me, was a takeaway for a lot of people as well yesterday. We're on pause. The bar to a rate hike, I think, is a whole lot higher than the next bar for a rate cut.
And we saw that with the equity pop. Don't you agree with the language yesterday?
I would totally agree with
the equity pop coming out. Tech dominance, I was thunderstruck. I listened to the conference call in close detail on Apple. 2 ideas, John. Services is a Fortune 70 company, and the installment plan is basically up 100%. Gene Munster put an all-in value of $350 a share on Apple.
Dan Ives of Wedbush looking for a three-handle as well.
Three-handle as well?
Upgraded his price target this morning. I'll catch up with him a little bit later.
I'm going to be a wet blanket. The statistic of the morning for me is the fact that people are waiting longer to replace their iPhones. And over the last 3 years, the average age of a smartphone has increased more than 3 months to almost 20 months.
Is that the UBS research?
That was the UBS research.
Really,
I think
really
that's interesting.
Stuff. I agree with you. Totally agree with you. The one thing I'd watch in markets right now, we can talk about it a little bit later in the program, high yield spreads aren't buying the happy talk of the last couple of days.
I saw that.
Just started to break out. We really struggle to keep these levels of 350 over. Just starting to move back out again.
Michael Barr, they got their gift at Game 7. Did it turn into ratings? I saw good ratings.
We are not calling them the Washington Senators. That was 1972.
When I was in Washington for IMF, there were a lot of people wearing senator hats.
I know, but literally that name was changed in 1972.
You know, I'm convinced that you lived for a decade. I'm not sure what decade it was, where you were sort of awake to everything going on around you, and then nothing happened for the next 60 years.
What was distinctive, Michael Barr, what we saw last night?
That team started the season at 19-31, and they went on to win the whole thing.
We're talking the Nationals.
AC Milan could win.
Yeah, sure.
There is hope for AC Milan.
What are we listening to?
We're listening to Washington Celebrate. Good morning, 99.1 FM, Washington. This is Bloomberg.
Ring of fire, the ring of fire.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
With a Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. The NCAA says it will allow student athletes to profit off their name, images, and likeness eventually. UCLA gymnast Caitlin Ohashi on ABC.
There's really nothing you have the right to do in NCAA. So this just allows us to open doors and start careers ahead of time before the 4 years are up.
Gene Smith is the athletic director at Ohio State University.
Hopefully there's rational, reasonable, and prudent decisions that are made that look at what we do, understand that we're the practitioners, we live in this space, and allow us to do our work. Obviously, we can't influence what others think in that regard, but hopefully they'll watch us and give us time to do our work and then evaluate.
The NCAA board says while students should be able to make money from their image and name, they cannot get paid for playing college sports. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Every investor should ask questions.
Is our money in the right place?
What am I really being charged? And is it eating into my returns?
Is my advisor a fiduciary? Is he always a fiduciary?
A good place to start is with an independent registered investment advisor. As fiduciaries, they live by a simple rule: always act in the best interest of their clients. That's why Charles Schwab is proud to support more independent financial advisors and their clients than anyone else. Visit findyourindependentadvisor.com.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
A party line vote expected today in the House of Representatives, with Democrats poised to pass guidelines on going forward with the impeachment inquiry, including public hearings. Chicago Teachers Union leaders say they've agreed to accept a tentative contract deal reached at the bargaining table, but will remain out of classrooms until they get a deal to make up for the lost days. And angry Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
I want to make this very clear. The contract as it stands today, even as it stood a week ago, is the most generous deal that CPS has ever offered to the CTU.
Game 7, the World Series last night in Houston, called by Fox Sports host Joe Buck.
3-2. Here it is! The Washington Nationals are world champions for the first time in franchise history.
The Nats defeating the Houston Astros 6-2, the first time in World Series history that the road team has won every game. Stocks have been fluctuating in the pre-market. Dow futures now off 75. I'm Michael Toscano.
You can't be the only one who spends time examining angles.
This deal, what would it look like?
You're right. The others are here.
Is he doing a good job, you think?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. This update's brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at IBKR.com/CME Mini. U.S. stock index futures are falling this morning following reports that China doubts the possibility of a long-term trade deal with President Trump. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. And right now, the S&P futures are down about 11 points. The Dow futures down 88. NASDAQ futures down 20. The DAX in Germany is down about 0.25%. 10-year Treasury up 10/30 seconds, yield 1.73%. The yield on the 2-year 1.58%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.9% or 52 cents at 54.54 a barrel, and COMEX gold is up 0.9% or $13.20 at 1509.90 an ounce. The euro 1.1153 against the dollar. The yen is at 108.12. Royal Dutch Shell warning of uncertainty on the pace of its buyback program, even as it reported solid earnings. BNP Paribas reported a 35% gain in fixed income trading. Drug maker Sanofi's profit came in above estimates. Facebook and Apple both posted upbeat results after the close yesterday, and Facebook is up 4% this morning. Apple up 1.6%. Kraft Heinz beat, and Altria Group, the U.S. maker of Marlboro cigarettes, reported a $4.5 billion charge related to its investment in Joule Laboratories. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you very much. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios here in New York City for our audience worldwide. What does it tell you guys? That Twitter's down 1.44% in early trading and Facebook's up by more than 4%. One is banning political advertising. The other is saying,
this is a huge,
let's go for it.
Huge deal.
I agree.
We addressed this morning, and we don't have the time here to dive into it, but this is way underreported.
The market is saying, if you guys are prudent and actually take actions to remove some of what people are complaining about, we're going to penalize you because you're not going to be as profitable, period, the end.
I'll go back further. I'll go back to Mr. Sarnoff and the RCA company and the invention of NBC and the Federal Communications Act of 1934. This has all been seen before. These people in Silicon Valley think this is all original. They're not regulated. Everyone else is.
We're not a media company.
Exactly. Well said. Facebook is saying, we get that. We have to be responsible and run political messages like every other regulated media company. Twitter's trying to play by a different book. I'm too old to understand the Twitter book.
Well, I personally want to see ongoing whether Facebook comes under pressure for not doing more on a regulatory front, because you are getting a lot of pushback, at least in words, but the market doesn't buy it right now.
Well, no pressure in the stock market, Tom. Not generating the kind of growth that this company's spinning off quarter after quarter.
Yeah, well, that would be true. Shannon Cross Research, with us now on what we saw yesterday with Apple. Shannon, I was blown away by the rigor and the discreetness of the conference call. Shannon Cross has been on 4,812 conference calls, and I would suggest, Shannon, this one was different. There is a persistency and inertial force to growth at Apple.
I think you just called me old, but yes, other than that, there clearly was strength in sort of across the board, and they talked about the growth in the installed base and, the strength of the iPhones and how they're improving. And then when you look at what they're doing in services and a reacceleration to 18% growth in services across all geos, across all products, it was a recurring theme within the call.
We got a lot of ideas here, but just one I'll bring up is they mentioned installment sales are geometric in growth. Is that nothing more, Shannon, than taking expensive toys and putting them on a monthly plan? And do you have to do your Excel spreadsheets differently because they're moving literally to being a monthly plan utility?
Well, I mean, the entire tech hardware industry is trying to move to as a service. So hardware as a service, service as a service, everything going to a monthly recurring charge, whether it's for consumers or it's for corporate. So I think, that trend is something that Apple is working with. But Tim was very careful to say he didn't think this was a wholesale change in the model. I mean, they're clearly selling devices, on a onesie-twosie basis as well.
Shannon, there's a hope that we get a real change to the hardware next year with 5G. And I'm just wondering whether that business, the iPhone business, can return to the kind of growth we've seen in years gone by anytime soon.
Well, I think it'll be difficult. I mean, there's a lot of large numbers here, right, in terms of how big their installed base is, and that there's clearly going to be a refresh. I think the refresh is actually positioned across this year and next year. If you look at the features that they added this year and, the demand they're seeing, which is clearly improved from last year. And then obviously with 5G, you'll probably see more promotions from the carriers to try to get subscribers. So, I think it's more of a sort of a 2-year process. Will they get to significant growth? I don't know. I'm not sure they know. It may be, kind of lumpy. But I think the trajectory of increased installed base is what's key to them, because if you look at it, services is about 20% of the revenue, but already 30% of the gross profit. So the bias is the upside on gross profit dollars.
Shannon, it's interesting to me that no one's talking about a new product that's going to generate the kind of growth that we saw from the iPhone or even the Apple Watch. There's no talk of that anymore. Now it's just services and installs and the details that are not as exciting. Does that worry you at all?
Again, because the margin differential is so much greater in services, I think some of the new products they're talking about are things like Apple Card, which, the CFO thinks could be, meaningful over the next several years. So, it is changed, but it's hard to have big hits in product land. And I would point to AirPods. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but more and more people have AirPods. There's been a really good reaction. $250 ones that they launched yesterday.
$250.
Shut up.
What's how many have you got in the Keene household now?
It's the new Lego. You walk around and you step on the damn things.
My gosh.
I'm going to start. I'm saying to people, pick them up, or they're going to get thrown out.
The Tom Keene household is very different to the other households across the country.
Let me just tell you,
your Lego is a $250 pair of headphones.
No, that's the thing. I didn't know they cost that much.
I would massacre my children if they had
Shannon,
$250.
Gene Munster was on earlier. He's got a 350 view out there. It's not like a sell side target, but what's critical here is Gene Munster moves Apple towards a Procter & Gamble kind of valuation as a mature consumer entity. Can you go through that exercise, or is Apple forever going to be a product-driven AirPod company to you?
No, we started talking to investors a couple of years ago about the concept that, this is more and more recurring revenue, the ecosystem, people tied to the brand. They've looked at it. Trying to figure out, at what point, your recurring revenue and your profit matters from a multiple perspective. And I think you will start to see multiple expansion over time, because Apple has become so dominant, and, they've expanded so much beyond just being a device company.
Shannon, great to catch up with you this morning. Shannon Cross there of Cross Research, the co-founder. Apple stock positive in the pre-market, guys, up by around about 1.64%.
You've got Dan Ives with a 300 statistic, as you mentioned.
Yeah, catching up with him a little bit later.
Apple's a new Lego creator in the Tom Keene.
Hey,
tell us more.
I want to hear more about
this. I'm getting rave reviews out in the media on the new AirPods. I've never used them. Have you used them?
My son actually has AirPods. He saved up his money. They did not cost $250.
Have you ever used them?
So my approach to all of this, because I don't like being the first mover, let everyone go around just for a little while looking like an idiot with these AirPods.
I think they look
and then
cool.
after you see more and more people start to wear them, it becomes a little bit more normal. And then I'll get rid of them. Here's my issue. What I like to do with my headphones with the cable in is walk around the office and not be bothered by people and pretend to be listening to something.
You do that with me all the time.
Right?
I do that too.
I like to do that on the street too. Just walk around, headphones in, no one's going to bother you. With the AirPods, I'm just wondering if they'll provide the same defense.
You know what, actually, my son, what he does when he doesn't want to listen anymore to anything that I'm saying is he'll put his AirPods in and he'll tap them
he'll
twice.
Tap them very aggressively. Just so people know that you're on the AirPods.
Something's going on and it's not you.
Nice.
I believe I saw it's 3% of revenue, which I never would have guessed. And full disclosure for those of a greater ute, I remember when iPods were a total failure. It was a failed, it wasn't Lisa, it was a failed product. And one, two, third iteration or whatever, boom, there it was.
Well, I personally, it raises a question whether services can overcome the slowdown in iPhone sales. And the fact that they don't break out the data anymore of the iPhone units, to me, is indicative that they're very nervous.
I don't know if I agree with that. What I would say is the revenue contribution from services, it's got a 60-plus margin multiple. It's generating 33% of their profit model right now. And that's stunning. Well, that's like minting money.
Okay, but then there's this flip side where you've had a number of app creators that have gone after Apple and said, you guys are not being fair in the way that you rank things or sort of how you list your products over other people. And I do think as they focus more on services, that's going to be more of a regulatory overhang for them. It has to be.
Yeah, I would say less than the others right now. They're still perceived as a manufacturer. What I know is you go in the store, it's jammed.
Have you been to the new store?
Which stores, plural.
Oh, stores.
Depends where.
You spend the weekend going to the stores.
Yeah, you go to Glossier and stand in line.
You want to talk about my trips to Glossier?
Yeah, well,
we'll do that a little bit later.
It was cheaper than my trip to Apple.
I have no doubt that's true. Equity futures this morning. Everyone's like, what's Glossier? You don't want to know. Equity futures down 10 points on the S&P 500. We're negative a third of 1%. This is Bloomberg.
It's another Thursday morning, yet another windy day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
The B&Q 3 for 2 offer is now on, including an unmissable 3 for 2 on all paint, such as Dulux, Valspar and Farrow & Ball. For this show-stopping deal, hurry to B&Q. You can do it when you're 3 for 2 it. Every third item a single transaction in descending price order free. Offer ends November 3rd. See DIY.com.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
World 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom Keene. Bloomberg Surveillance. Thrilled you're with us. Up all night watching the Washington Nationals. Good morning, 99.1 FM Washington. A different morning in Washington as well. Futures at -10. Futures were up. Green on the screen. And then Bloomberg reports that China really slowing down after this. What is it called? Phase one?
Phase one.
Phase
truce,
one.
Whatever you want to call it.
Whatever you're going to call it. After that, the article is very clear. Congratulations to Brendan Murray and our trade team with their serious reporting on the Chinese view, which is just simply they need tariff relief.
Chinese officials basically casting doubt about reaching a comprehensive long-term trade deal. I should emphasize phase one and that agreement still intact.
Is that because we're mid-cycle?
It progresses. You really don't like that phrase, mid-cycle, do you?
It's terrible. I would agree.
It's like short-term, medium-term, long-term. Ned Phelps, a laureate from Columbia, once took my head off about medium term.
What's wrong with mid-cycle?
Well,
it's pretty obvious what it is.
We don't even know how long the cycle is.
11 years.
It's the Fed's way of saying that we're not on our way to zero with interest rates. That essentially is what they're trying to communicate. It's not an end-of-cycle adjustment to rates.
It's the frustration when people say, we're in the 8th inning. I mean, the 8th inning, the 7th inning has been like 4 years long. How are we going to do this?
Tomorrow, my conversation with John Farrow, with the vice chairman of the Fed, and should we walk out of the interview if he says 8th inning?
I can't walk out the interview because you know who I've got straight after that interview? Larry Kudlow.
These are two different
from the White House.
You know. From Clarida, you're not going to get John.
We've got quite an hour coming up tomorrow, haven't we?
Did you see the vice chairman of the Fed doing a Kudlow imitation?
No.
I just, that would be.
Why don't you ask him? We're not going to ask him. We're going to take these interviews very seriously, Lisa.
Yeah, seriously, folks. We will speak to Vice Chairman Clarida the definition of a solid economy with that 1.9% statistic.
Am I going to have to keep you on a tight leash tomorrow?
Well, Bloomberg Surveillance. Cohn Resnick. Check out Business of Baseball, an original MLB video series exploring the business side of America's pastime. Visit CohnResnick.com/MLB Cohn Resnick Advisory, Assurance Tax. And we love that Cohn Resnick links baseball into the season-ending Washington Senators. John?
Henrietta Trey's joining us now, Director of Economic Policy at Vader Partners. Henrietta, great to have you with us on the program. We'd love your thoughts on our latest reporting and the prospect of phase one, even phase one, breaking down at some point in the future.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Well, per usual, the reporting is amazing, and I completely agree. I would say that I think that China is basically confirming what the administration has essentially led on. A phase one deal is, in my opinion, really just acknowledgement that U.S. farmers and manufacturers are in a very real set of dire straits here, and the administration is being pressured extensively just to get us back to where we were in 2017. I don't care about optics. I can't take it anymore, is the message from farmers. We're desperate. Give us $12 billion. We don't need 40. And for the president to come out and say random numbers that China's never confirmed, like 40 and $50 billion over a 2-year window eventually, is essentially just admitting in different words that we're not going to get a grand, robust deal, which is exactly what you're reporting and what China is indicating overnight.
The most significant part to me, Henrietta Treyz, is the idea that to get to phase one, they have to agree on the parameters for phase two, even just the timeline, and that there isn't a meeting of the minds there. How significant is that?
Well, I would love to say that it's significant, except for that I think that's what the tariffs are for. I don't think anybody has high expectations that, every other day they're going to be on the phone working diligently on a phase two. Indeed, one of the things that was most telling is that they picked all the low-hanging fruit and put it in basket one. And doing that creates a scenario where nobody, especially not China, would be incentivized to come back and continue negotiating with you. And that's what USTR Lighthizer believes is the purpose of tariffs. Tariffs have a point. And the point is to force those conversations, whether a timeline exists or not. And USTR Lighthizer believes that they've been working.
Futures at -9. I do want to point out the importance of this article. Both Maria over at Fox Business Squawk are talking up this Bloomberg story. Henrietta, as you mentioned, within it is the idea of the agricultural flattening of America. I've got you from Louisiana. I got Lisa Abramowitz from Fargo. I mean, the fact is, does the calendar play in here? Does winter play in here? Let me go to you, Henrietta, first. Does winter play? Does the seasons, do they play into this debate?
The seasons in terms of planting certainly do, although that was really a September time horizon for the latest crop that they were most concerned with. But when I think about phasing and timing, I think more about the politics. In my opinion, when you still have, 12 plus Democrats in the presidential campaign and they can't get a cohesive, consistent message on trade, it's the best chance for President Trump to hit the pause button without expecting some unified national message from the Democratic Party to challenge his decision to hit pause.
I want to be clear here that we are hitting pause, Henrietta, that this phase one trade deal is still very much in play. And from the perspective of the markets, what matters here? And Henrietta, you weren't surprised by our reporting. I don't know anyone on Wall Street that was surprised this morning by our reporting. And I think that goes some way to explaining why the equity market is only down just 1/3 of 1%. The risk here is that the Chinese and their refusal to budge on the bigger issue blows up the truce and the pause we have currently. Do you see that as a real risk in the coming months?
I think that China holds all the cards here. So to that extent, absolutely. If China decides that they are better off blowing up the President Trump presidency and holding off until there's another Democrat in office and seeing what happens, or just stalling, which has historically been their main negotiating tactic, that is entirely up to them. And the U.S. is pretty clearly illustrated that all they need right now are agriculture purchases. So accepting poultry, accepting Boeing jets, accepting more ethanol would be nice, but really we just need to get back to 17 and whatever the Chinese will throw at us. So they've seen that. I think this is mostly a political calculation on the part of China now. Do they want to throw President Trump a bone or not? So, and it's entirely in their hands, not ours.
When you talk about the political pressures from the agricultural region, we talked about how bankruptcies surged 24% due to some of the trade war concerns. And the recent bankruptcies concentrated in the 13-state Midwestern region, which is a key battleground for President Trump's reelection. And I'm wondering, is there any analysis of how much a trade deal will boost support in that region, or whether the support of President Trump is independent, frankly, and whether people are just happy that he's taking a hard line? Because I've heard that from some analysts.
Yeah, I would say the bulk of the population out there, and you can see from the president's internal approval numbers within the party, is that he is very much doing the God's work with China in a lot of their opinions. Yes, it's sitting in their pocketbook, and yes, historically, maybe if the economy was worse more broadly, that would be the only thing that they cared about. But if you look at polling data and see what voters care about, the economy is still high up there, but not as high as it was during the recession. So ironically, when the economy is good, people care less about it. The farmers are a different story, obviously, because the small farmers are going out of business, going into bankruptcy. And one of the things we hear, and I know that Republicans on the agriculture committees here, is I don't care about List 4B tariffs because there's nothing China can do to make my life worse. It's already awful. I mean, I think we've discussed that before. So I think what President Trump is doing right here, right now, is making sure that he can create an off-ramp. Forget curbing semiconductor sales and curbing AI and visual and audio surveillance and all that stuff. Let's just get the farmers some soybean purchases, some pork, and that's what this phase one deal is doing. It's a complete capitulation on the part of the U.S. In terms of our long-term economy in exchange for just getting back to where we were 2 years ago.
Henrietta, thank you so much. Henrietta Trace with Veda Partners. John, we're seeing it in the rate market, yields coming in, and what's important here, John, is full faith and credit spreads come in off the Fed meeting and then come in further this morning. And as you get ready for the real yield seen worldwide tomorrow, 1 p.m. on Bloomberg Television, the high yield area is not full faith and credity.
No, and that's what I want to talk about in the coming days as well. High yield spreads got towards the tights of 2019 in and around 350 basis points. And through this year, we've tried and tested those levels, and Lisa really struggled to hold them. What's interesting in the context, the backdrop of a market that's still okay in equities, high yield just a little bit of widening through yesterday, through Tuesday too.
I will say it is very hard to look at the high yield bond market as a monolith right now because you're seeing divergences with respect to the lowest rated bonds falling out of bed, with respect to energy debt falling out of bed. You're getting pockets of weakness and bankruptcies that are erupting where you have continuing tightness at certain levels, the top rated high yield debt. So I will just say this is a highly bifurcated market. And if you look beneath it, the question that emerges is the weakness that we're seeing in specific companies. Is this the sort of first mover? Is this the canary in the coal mine? Or is this just companies that are struggling and can't work with such leverage?
A question for later on in the program to get you up to speed on the equity price action elsewhere. We have futures negative, down 8 points on the S&P 500, negative just 0.25%, alongside Tom Keene and Lisa Abramowitz. I'm Jonathan Ferro from New York City for our audience worldwide. You are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
And now the news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, thank you very much. Expect to see a lot of empty cubicles in offices have been around Washington, D.C. today. Fans of the Nationals have been out celebrating last night's World Series victory. The Nationals won the deciding Game 7 in Houston last night, 6-2. North Korea has launched a pair of projectiles into the ocean just 4 days after warning it's losing patience with the United States and threatening a, quote, exchange of fire at any moment if the U.S. does not make overtures to restart diplomatic talks. A Pakistani official says the death toll from a horrific train fire that broke out after a cooking gas stove used by passengers for cooking breakfast exploded. It has risen to 71. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Tom.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Coming up, more discussion on this new technology dominance. Dan Ives scheduled in the 9 o'clock hour, his $300 target on Apple. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
There's something for everybody this Halloween at Aldi. Dead good sweets, decorations, face paints. Be afraid. Be very afraid to miss out on these shockingly low prices. In store now. Everybody get to Aldi for an amazing Halloween.
Halloween's back, alright. London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and V Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
This autumn, as the nights draw in, beat the cold with Now TV. Curl up with the latest blockbusters, including Bohemian Rhapsody and Hotel Mumbai. Plus, with over 40 new movies added each month, from Aquaman to How to Train Your Dragon 3, Now TV's got you covered, wherever you feel like watching. Get cozy with the latest and best movies for just $11.99 a month. Search Now TV today. 18 plus month passes auto-renews unless cancelled. Terms apply.
Hey NFL fans, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you have unlimited access to every team and every game in the league. Listen live as it happens or on demand. Anytime, anywhere. All season long. Search NFL today.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man fleet for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on
Search
the right.
NBA Today to start listening.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Stations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs.
Ride-hailing company Lyft blew past analyst revenue estimates for the third quarter. Lyft said full-year revenue will now be at least $3.57 billion, beating the projections of about $3.5 billion. Increased ridership and higher revenue per rider drove results, and the company said it will turn a profit in 2021. Shares are rising in after-hours trading, and I go straight to D.A. Davidson analyst Tom White in New York. Tom, what's more impressive, the top line or the bottom line here?
I think you'd have to say the top line trends, as you said, a nice kind of 5% beat on revenue, and it was a high quality beat also. They beat on active riders, and they also really benefited and beat on a sharp acceleration in revenue per rider, which was driven by them really optimizing on price, so taking up prices on some consumer fares. It's an initiative they started kind of late in the second quarter on very select kind of targeted routes and in targeted markets. And so the top line beat was quite nice. The EBITDA beat, the headline beat was quite nice. There's a little bit more nuance there, which I think led to the stock. It's trading up now, but it was trading up even a bit more right when the headline numbers came out.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app. Or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 8:17 on Wall Street, and U.S. stock index futures are moving lower this morning. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. U.S. futures are lower, but have paired some losses since the last time we spoke. Dow futures now down 54 points. S&P's dropped